Two little girls walked into the skyscraper office of one of the most feared CEOs in the city, holding nothing but a crayon drawing and a folded letter. And within minutes, that same powerful man canceled his meetings, called off a billion-dollar project, and started to cry. What could possibly be written on a child's paper that made a billionaire change everything? Stick around because this is not the story you think it is. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's jump into the story. The city was just waking up when Tristan Wren arrived at his office. The sky over downtown was still a shade of blue-gray, and the sidewalks had more pigeons than people. But that suited Tristan just fine. He liked to start early, before the phones rang and anyone asked questions. Inside the building that bore his name, Tristan's private elevator opened directly onto the 58th floor. The walls were glass. The floors were white marble. Everything reflected light or money. He liked it that way. Sharp, clean, and cold. Just like him. "Morning, Mr. Wren," said Helen, his assistant of 14 years, already waiting with black coffee and a tablet full of numbers. "Any fires?" he asked, barely glancing at her. "Nothing urgent. The condo tower deal's on your desk. Contracts from the hospital board came in overnight. Just needs your signature." Tristan nodded. Another day, another win. He took his coffee, sat behind his desk, one that cost more than most people's cars, and got to work. That's when the phone buzzed. "Sir," Helen said, her voice a little unsure. "Security just called. There's a situation in the lobby. Handle it. They say it's two little girls." That made him look up. Little girls? They claim they're here for family visit day. Said they're related to someone. Security let them through because of the event. Tristan narrowed his eyes. "So? Let them wait in the lobby." "There's more," Helen said. "They're in your elevator." "What?" Before he could move, the private elevator made its signature soft. Ding. The door slid open. For a second he saw no one. Then, two tiny heads appeared. Two girls no older than 6 walked out. Identical. Red curls tied up in uneven pigtails. Both wore white dresses with wrinkled pink ribbons. One held a small backpack. The other clutched a folded paper. They didn't look scared. "Mr. Wren?" the braver twin asked. "Are you the one who owns Mommy's hospital?" Tristan blinked. "What?" "Our mommy works there," said the other, stepping forward. "She's sick now. We want you to help." Helen stood frozen near the door, unsure whether to call security or fetch tissues. The girls walked right up to Tristan's massive desk and stopped. The bolder one pushed the folded paper across the polished surface. "We drew this," she said. "It's our mommy." Tristan, feeling more confused than he had in years, picked it up. Crayon. Simple shapes. A stick figure woman with a kind smile lying in a hospital bed. Machines all around. Two tiny girls holding her hands. He flipped the paper over. The back read in uneven letters, "Please don't close Mommy's hospital. We can help clean your office if that makes it better." His throat tightened. He'd seen a lot in his 38 years. Hostile takeovers, court battles, even a yacht sinking off the coast of Spain. But nothing had ever made his eyes sting like this. He cleared his throat. "What are your names?" "I'm Della," said the bold one. "This is Nora. Why are you here?" "We heard the doctors talking," Nora said quietly. "They said someone in a big tower was going to close the hospital. Mommy doesn't know we came. We told Aunt Marley we were going to a friend's. And she let you?" "She was working," Della admitted. "We kinda snuck out." Tristan leaned back in his chair. "That's brave." Della nodded. "We thought if we talked to you, you'd understand. Mommy says talking to people is better than talking about people." There was a silence in the room now. A strange stillness. The kind that settled in just before everything changed. Tristan stood slowly. "What's your mommy's name?" "Carmen Vale," Nora said. "She's a nurse in the kids' cancer department." He knew the name. She was on the list. Her job was one of the first scheduled to be cut after the hospital turned into condos. Turned to Helen. Cancel my morning meetings. Helen stared. Sir? All of them. And call my driver. We're going to Memorial Hospital. You're taking them there? Yes. He looked at the girls. Would you show me where your mommy works? They nodded, small faces suddenly bright. Nora reached for his hand. Without thinking, he let her take it. Helen watched them step into the elevator together. Her boss, known for breaking deals and never smiling, walking away with two tiny strangers and a paper covered in crayon. Sir, she called after him. What should I tell the investors? Tristan paused just before the doors closed. Tell them I met someone more important than they are. And with that, the doors shut. It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted, not even Tristan Wren himself. The drive to Memorial Hospital felt longer than usual. Tristan Wren sat in the back of his black town car, his thoughts swirling like the clouds gathering outside. In the seats across from him, Nora and Della stared out the window, their small faces pressed to the glass, hands still sticky from the lollipops his assistant had given them before they left. Is Mommy working today? Tristan asked gently. She was supposed to, Nora said, but she didn't feel good this morning. She still went, Della added, her voice proud. She always does. That part made something twist inside him. When they arrived at the hospital, the security guard blinked twice at the sight of the two children stepping out of a billionaire's car like it was normal. Della waved like she'd done it 100 times. Nora grabbed Tristan's hand again. Inside, they passed the front desk where nurses whispered and stared. He heard someone mutter, "That's him," followed by a nurse gasping, "Why is he holding that kid's hand?" Tristan didn't care. He wasn't here to impress anyone. They took the elevator to the 4th floor, children's oncology, bright walls, paper butterflies, drawings taped everywhere. A sign made of glitter read, "Hope lives here." She works in that room, Nora said, pointing. Number 409. Della walked ahead and knocked. A moment later, Carmen Vale opened the door. She looked exactly like her daughters. Same red curls, same sharp blue eyes, but tired. Very tired. Her smile started to form, then froze. "Girls? What are you—" Her eyes moved to Tristan. Recognition hit like a jolt. "You're— oh my God." Tristan raised a hand. "They showed up in my office this morning, with a drawing." Carmen covered her mouth. "You— They did what?" "Walked past your security. Took the private elevator," he said, glancing down at the girls. "Broke about 5 different rules." "I'm so sorry," Carmen said quickly. "They weren't supposed to—" "I'm not upset," Tristan said to his own surprise. "I came to talk." She looked like she wasn't sure if this was a dream or a prank. "Talk? About what?" "Your job, the hospital, the project." She glanced at the nurses behind him, then nodded slowly. "There's an empty conference room across the hall." 10 minutes later, Carmen sat across from him at a long, worn table, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The girls sat quietly, beside her, drawing on extra notepads. Tristan unfolded the blueprint plans from his briefcase and set them down between them. "These are for the luxury condos we're supposed to build on this site," he said. "You're on the employee termination list." Carmen nodded, unsurprised. "I know, we've all known for weeks." Why didn't anyone speak up? Her smile was sad. What would be the point? No one listens to nurses, especially ones who spend more time helping other people than looking out for themselves. Tristan studied her. She looked exhausted, pale, and something else, something fragile underneath all her strength. "Your daughter said you're sick." She nodded, once. "Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. That hit him harder than he expected." "I'm sorry." "Thanks," she said, not with sarcasm, but with practiced calm. "I've started treatment, the basics. Insurance won't cover the advanced stuff. It's too expensive." He felt his jaw tighten. So you're treating cancer patients while you're fighting your own? Someone has to, she said. Kids need care no matter what I'm going through. The silence that followed was heavy. Then he reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a folder. I've spoken with a few specialists this morning, he said. There's an experimental therapy showing promise. Your genetic markers might match. It's not guaranteed, but... She held up a hand. I can't afford that. I didn't say anything about cost. You mean, you'd cover it? Tristan shrugged. Your kids made a pretty strong case. Carmen blinked quickly, then shook her head. Why? Why would you do that? I lost someone, he said simply. Long time ago, same disease, and I had the money to stop it, but not the power, not then. She said nothing. I have both now, he added. Carmen exhaled. It's not just about treatment. What about the hospital? He looked at the blueprints. Again. That's a bigger question, but I'm not signing anything today. She glanced at her daughters. They thought you'd fix everything with one meeting. He gave the smallest of smiles. Kids think everything's fixable with crayons and truth. She laughed softly for the first time. They're not wrong. As they stood to leave, Tristan held out the drawing the girls had given him. I'll keep this, he said. Call it a reminder. Outside, as they said goodbye, Nora tugged his coat. Are you going to save Mommy? He didn't hesitate. I'm going to try. And for the first time in a long time, Tristan Wren meant it with his whole heart. 3 weeks had passed since that unexpected visit to room 409. Tristan Wren hadn't been the same since. The man who once buried himself in spreadsheets and stock. Reports now carried around a different kind of paperwork. Hospital charts, insurance appeal forms, and handwritten notes with treatment updates. His team at Wren Global barely recognized the new version of their CEO. He missed 3 strategy meetings. He canceled a gala dinner with international investors. He even let his lunch go cold for the first time in years. Instead, he spent most afternoons in the pediatric ward at Memorial Hospital, usually with 2 red-headed girls trailing behind him like ducklings. Nora and Della had quickly become part of his daily rhythm, and Tristan had grown oddly protective of them. The nurses had long stopped whispering. Now they just smiled and nodded when he arrived. Carmen Vale's treatment had started, fast and aggressive. She was responding, but the side effects were brutal. Her appetite had vanished, her hair had started to fall out in soft red strands, and some mornings she could barely lift her head. But every day she pushed through for the girls, and for the man who had unexpectedly become her lifeline. One afternoon, as spring began to soften the city's hard winter edge, Carmen managed to sit up long enough to join Tristan on the hospital's rooftop garden. It wasn't much. A few benches, some tired shrubs, a view of the city skyline framed by chain-link fencing. But in that moment, with the wind in her face and the sunlight hitting her skin, it felt like a palace. You know, she said slowly, sipping from a thermos of weak tea, I used to dream of getting out of this hospital. I didn't mean in a body bag. Tristan glanced sideways, trying to hide a smile. You always this dramatic? Only when I'm bald and nauseous. He laughed, genuinely. For the record, I think you're handling this better than most of my boardroom partners. Would. Carmen smiled, then leaned her head back against the bench. Thank you. For what? For everything. The treatment, the time, the patience with my very nosy children. Tristan shrugged. They grow on you. You say that like they're a fungus. They snuck into a billionaire's office. That's more impressive than most resumes. They sat in silence for a while. Then Carmen asked the question she'd been holding in for days. Why me? Tristan took his time answering. Because I know what it's like to be 7 years old, staring at a hospital bed and wondering why money can't save the person you love. She didn't say anything. My mom died in a hospital not so different from this one, he added. The people with the power to help didn't. I never forgot that. So now you're fixing it? I don't know if I can fix anything, he said, but I can try. Downstairs, Nora and Della were helping a nurse color signs for the children's playroom. They'd turned Tristan's assistant into their unofficial babysitter and convinced one of the janitors to teach them card tricks. They were adapting, as kids do. Later that evening, Carmen struggled through another round of treatment. Tristan stayed in the waiting room reading a worn copy of The Secret Garden to the girls. "She reads that to us too," Nora said quietly. "Does she do the voices?" he asked. Della nodded. "Better than you?" "I figured." He smiled. A few days later, something surprising happened. Carmen had a good day, a really good day. She walked unaided. She ate half a sandwich. She even cracked a joke that made the doctor snort iced coffee out of his nose. Tristan, who'd been watching her decline with quiet worry, felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. The scans came next, clearer than expected. The treatment was working, slowly, painfully. But it was working. Carmen cried when Dr. Amari gave her the update, not sobbing. Just a few silent tears wiped away before the twins could see. She wasn't out of the woods, but she had a path now. Afterward, she looked at Tristan with wet eyes and whispered, "You did this." He shook his head. "You did this, I just bought some medicine. Don't downplay it, you saved my life." He looked away, suddenly shy. "You'd have done the same if the roles were reversed. I don't have a billion-dollar company. You have something better," he said. "You have kindness, the healing kind." She didn't respond. She just reached over and gently took his hand. It stayed there for a long time. 6 months after Nora and Della walked into Tristan Wren's office, everything looked different. Carmen was officially in remission. The doctors at Memorial Hospital still used cautious words like monitoring, follow-up, and precautions. But the last scan had shown no signs of active cancer. For the first time in a long time, Carmen Vale could breathe without wondering if tomorrow would be stolen from her. She had gone from a patient in a hospital bed to a woman walking slowly but surely toward a second chance. And she wasn't walking alone. That Friday afternoon, she stood beside Tristan on the front steps of a freshly painted building on the city's west side. The sign above the door read, "The Vale Center for Family Oncology Support." It wasn't a hospital. It was something else, something she had dreamed of once back when she thought her ideas didn't matter. A place where families could stay close to loved ones during long treatments. A space filled with counselors, support groups, playrooms, and little things like coffee stations and quiet gardens. The kind of place she wished had existed when her diagnosis first hit like a train. "This is your doing," she said quietly, staring up at the sign. "No," Tristan said. "This is our doing. You had the vision. I just had a few extra zeros in the bank." Carmen smiled, but her eyes were shining. "Still, you built something that will outlive both of us." "That was the idea," he replied, not quite meeting her gaze. Inside, the twins were racing through the new playroom, which looked more like a library crossed with a spaceship. Della had already claimed a corner where the bookshelves wrapped around a beanbag chair. Nora had found a whiteboard and was giving a lecture to a confused volunteer about dinosaurs and their extremely unfair extinction. Tristan glanced over. "They're going to rule the world someday, aren't they?" Carmen nodded. "They already rule mine." That night, the four of them shared a quiet dinner in the garden behind the new center. The spring flowers were beginning to bloom, and Carmen finally had enough energy to sit without shifting from pain. At the end of the meal, Nora and Della pulled something out of Carmen's bag with exaggerated secrecy. "We made you something," Nora said, proudly presenting a new drawing. It showed 4 people, 2 tall, 2 small, standing in front of a building with smiling windows and a tree with heart-shaped leaves. Above their heads was a bright sun, and beneath their feet the grass was filled with words like home, hope, and together. Carmen blinked. "You girls, this is beautiful." "We wanted to give you something," Della said. "Since the first drawing started all of this." Tristan picked up the picture and studied it quietly. "You remembered the clouds," he said. pointing to soft gray swirls near the corners. Because sometimes it's still hard, Nora explained. But that doesn't mean we're not happy. Carmen reached across the table, laying a hand over Tristan's. They all understood what she didn't say. The road ahead was still long. There would be days filled with worry, moments of exhaustion and unexpected twists. But they had each other now. They were not alone. Later that week, Carmen returned to part-time nursing. Not at the hospital, but at the Vale Center, working with families who were just beginning their journey. She spoke gently, shared her story when it helped, and listened far more than she talked. Meanwhile, Tristan, once the unshakable CEO of Wren Global, began giving Friday afternoons to the center. He didn't come in with cameras or business, plans. He came with coffee and crayons with math games and bedtime books. The staff called him Mr. Fix-It because he was constantly adjusting furniture or replacing batteries in donated toys. One afternoon, Della sat beside him while he worked on a budget sheet for the center's next fundraiser. "Do you still work at your big office?" she asked. "I do," he replied, "but I work here too. This place is just as important." "Is this what you wanted to do when you were a kid?" she asked, tilting her head. He paused. "No, I wanted to build skyscrapers, be the biggest, make the most money." "Why?" "Because I thought that would make me feel strong." She considered this. "Does it?" Tristan smiled. "Not like this does." As the sun set behind the center that day, casting long golden light over the garden and benches, Carmen stood near the window and watched her daughters laugh with the man who had changed their lives, who had in many ways saved them. But what Tristan never said, what Carmen had quietly understood all along, was this. They had saved him, too. Not with money. Not with medicine. But with something far stronger. With a crayon drawing. With brave little footsteps. With love. Because sometimes the most powerful transformations don't come from plans or profits. They come from choosing to care. Even when it's unexpected. Even when it's hard. Even when you've spent your whole life building walls. And in that caring, you find something more valuable than any skyscraper. You find home. You find healing. You find the future.